Hi everybody. You'll see today there's a little bit of a mess going on over the table here, and that's because as I was downstairs this morning sorting out all the packaging and the junk mail to get recycled, I realised that some of these bits have some quite nice patterns going on them that I thought might be quite nice to use on a colouring page. But most of these patterns are quite small little areas that would be quite difficult to use on a colouring page, but I had the idea that maybe I could use them, all these little small areas, in a kind of patchwork sort of effect to fill in a colouring page. And I thought an ideal candidate for using this kind of effect would maybe be Millie Marotta. So we'll see here we have a picture from Millie Marotta, and I have gone around and traced the outline of this deer here. As deer and antlers are my theme for this month, I thought this deer would be quite a nice picture to try and work on. And what I thought I could try and do as a quick little project while everyone's out of the house for a couple hours, I could try and cut out all these pieces of a nice pattern, patchwork them into this deer here and see what we could make happen with some kind of a patchwork. I also have some packaging brown paper here as well that I thought I could bring in for the background if we can get the patchwork for the actual main deer to be working. So yeah, that was the idea for today, to try and colour a picture with essentially trash, stuff that would be recycled or thrown away, and see if I could use that in a colouring page. So without any further ado, I'll zoom us in a little bit and we'll get started. Okay, I've zoomed us in a little bit there. And this is the template that I've traced off from the deer. Hopefully you can kind of see there on the camera. As you can see, I've simplified the shapes quite a lot. I've smoothed out the edges and tried to make sure that I'll be covering all of these flowery bits that are going on when I do stick on my bits of collage. And what my plan is to use this template to try and figure out how big of a pieces I could be using to make up this deer. Cutting pieces out of the patterned junk mail and stuff that I've got here, sticking those on and actually making the deer up out of the patchwork. Then I plan on cutting out a kind of square in the background and putting some of the brown packing paper behind there. This is the picture that's on the back of our deer here, and I'm not too bothered about losing that one, so I'm not too bothered about cutting out a square in the middle there to be sticking my page behind. If I do ever feel like colouring something along those lines, and there is one fairly similar on the other side that's actually filled in with all these little tree patterns. So I have that one there to colour if I really want to. So working with that template here, I don't have totally concrete plans. It's just going to be a very quick video. I'm hoping to show how I would go ahead and work with these bits of paper here. My first kind of vague plan is to use this leaflet here, and maybe use this gold to be cutting out the deer's antlers. If I can hopefully go around these kind of embellishments on the corner, those could be used in other places, I'm thinking. But yeah, my plan is to maybe use these bits of the shiny gold to cut out the deer's antlers. And the way that I do that is by going over the back of the image with the pencil and then turning it over and going once again over the same lines that I have there to transfer the shape onto the leaflet. Okay, so plans have changed after a little while there. I tried cutting out the antlers of the deer using this template as a pattern. It wasn't working, they wouldn't fit into the confines of that frame that I found on the leaflet. So my solution to this problem is, once the rest of the deer has been kind of patchworked in, I'm going to try and cut out a section in the middle of the page here to basically get rid of these antlers that are drawn in, and I'm going to stick on some antlers that I've made myself using the frame, the kind of corner bits on the frame from the leaflet, and just stick those in over the background that we patch in. Sort of like that, to make our own little antlers up for this deer, which will hopefully work once the rest of the deer is actually patchworked in. I'm crossing my fingers. Plans have had to change a little bit there because it just wasn't working. Things don't always work. There's a lot of adapting, improvising. So I'm going to go ahead and try and patchwork in the rest of the deer where the shapes are a lot simpler, and I should be able to patchwork that in hopefully quite easily using the patterns that I have. This seems to be working slightly better. I've cut out his head from this leaflet here with the stars. I've tried to position it, the position of his head, to make a star where his eye would be. And that seems to fit quite nicely. So I'm going to go ahead with the plan to cut out the rest of this deer from the patchwork and try and stick those on. There we go. Here's his head. I'll try and position it so that it does cover as much of that kind of leafy parts around the outside as possible. Just press that down there, and the plan is to be going around the outside with a thick black line art to maybe cover up any little bits that we do miss. So that's a start. We do have his head cut out of that little starry pattern there. Maybe this kind of green pattern here I think fits in quite nicely, so I might go with that. For his chest kind of area, let's see how much we can actually fit onto there. I want to be having the stripes kind of angled down a little bit maybe. Maybe going across his body, do I think? Like that. Might work quite well. So we're going to need to there. Okay, like so. That's transferred quite well, I think. There we go. That one seems to work quite well. I wanted to use this kind of pattern of circles here as well, so maybe we'll bring that in on his back there. Fit in as much of the kind of circly pattern as I can. Oh yeah, that's working quite nicely. If I position this part here so that we can maybe bring in as much of that pattern as possible. Maybe cut that off for his leg there. Come around up here. We don't really want any of the lettering, so we'll cut him off around about there and just have this kind of shape out of that circly pattern. We'd have this kind of blue pattern here with the blue stripes and the sparkles that I think we might be able to bring in. I'm hoping that maybe if I can avoid using these flowers, I can bring those in again and collage them on in other places. That might work quite well. But maybe for his legs there, we could bring in this kind of blue stripy pattern. Maybe try and avoid those flowers as much as possible. I can show you here what we're actually doing. Trying to avoid the flowers as much as possible. There we go, we're just about avoiding the flowers there. So I'll go ahead and transfer that onto that. Again, it doesn't really matter if the shape is bigger than the kind of area that we're trying to cover. As long as we try and cover as much of the outside as possible. I'd like to be able to cut out these flowers and actually collage them on as flowers, maybe as a tribute to the original iron art that Millie Marotta actually gave us. Just about big enough to fit there. Yeah, I think we're doing okay. Just 3 more legs to work on there, and then I'll see about cutting out the background so we can add our own little antlers to our deer. We can add in these flowers. Yeah, I quite like how that's going. Maybe we can put the bigger one on as well. Hopefully trim down this big flower to fit onto his chest here. There we go, I trimmed down that big flower so he'd fit on the chest there, just under his chin, and maybe cover up a little bit of that line art that was creeping out as well. So I think that's worked quite well for us. For this leg here, I've cut that out another advert that was actually in that little leaflet we had there, and that seems to fit in quite nicely, so I've just added that leg as being green. I've cut this leg here out of another piece of pattern that I've actually found from that little booklet we had through the door, and I was thinking to add that leg on there, but I have actually found these pieces here also that came as part of a menu for a Chinese restaurant, I think these were, and I do want to add some of these little frilly bits. I have a couple of little frilly bits there with these kind of red frills and the gold. So I'll stick this leg on and then maybe see about adding those frills that I do like. The good thing is it's collage. We're having a bit of fun. We can add any little bits of embellishments that we do want to. So any kind of junk mail with any kind of pattern in it could probably be used for something like this, especially in these kind of Zentangle-y books where we don't have to actually be realistic. So let's see if we can bring in this frill here from the Chinese menu. I think it looks pretty cool. It might work quite nicely on a leg there. I'm not entirely sure, but we'll try. Oh yes, we can add that in there. I like it. I'm going to add it in. That's added in a little frill there. I'm quite happy with how that's looking. We do have another one here, but I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to be able to add this one in. There we go. A little bit of creative cutting. I think we might be able to get away with this one as well for part of that leg there. It's following pretty much the same shape with just a frill at the side, which I quite like. Now we have one leg left, and what can we cut out for that? Maybe we can go back to the stars. There might be enough of that to cut out that leg, I'm thinking. There we go. That'll do nicely, I think, for his back leg. And we're pretty much done with the actual deer there, I think. Let's add another little frill for a bit of fun, just onto this leg here. Okay, now I'm going to go around all the edges just with the uni-ball signo gold gel pen to add a bit of sparkle. There's all the outlining done, and I've added in a few marks along the edges of these different patches of the collage to make it look as if they are stitched together in some kind of patchwork way there. I've also drawn in some lines down the edges of the page here, because what I want to be doing is cutting out this centre piece of the page. It'll be a bit of a delicate operation, but I want to be replacing this middle of the page here with the brown packing paper, mainly as a kind of plan to get rid of these line art of the antlers here and give him my own antlers that we cut out from the gold frame earlier on. So fingers crossed I can make this work, and I'll catch up with you once I've cut out this section. That's the middle strip of the page cut out there. I'm going to go ahead and outline the edges of our actual page that we've got left with the gold Sharpie, and that should hopefully separate it from the brown paper once I fix that in, and will hopefully look somewhat similar to the gold outlines that we've been using on our actual deer. So I'm going to go ahead and outline these edges. I've quickly gone along the edges there with the gold Sharpie just to neaten those off and to hopefully make them stand out from the brown paper once we stick that in behind. So what I'm going to do now is to flip this page over, make sure I glue the back of this deer pretty well and these strips so that once I bring in the brown paper we can stick this in behind. Now let's flip our page back over and get this backing paper stuck in. And just trim off our edges. Now it's time to be adding on the antlers that we made. I've just slipped this one in behind his head there because that is the antler that is furthest away, the other side of his head. And here's our nearest one. I'll give those a gold outline as well. I think he's needing a bit of an eye going on there, so I found this kind of embellishment, part of that frame that we cut up to make his antlers. I'm going to try cutting out this little circle here and sticking that on to make an eye for him. A little bit of glue on the paper there because it is a teeny tiny little circle. I'm not entirely sure how well that will be easy to do. That looks about right. I think that works pretty well. Okay, that's all done, and to me it was still looking a little bit plain with this big expansive background there. So when I do collage, I usually like to add a little bit of text, and the words that I found while looking again through the pile of junk mail there, the little bits and pieces I had, these two words here, I found vintage and gold, and I think the colours also fit in with what we've actually been doing there. Keeping the text in the block as it is, instead of cutting out each letter individually, will also help to hold the edges of the paper here onto the background that we have stuck on, so that'll be a little bit of reinforcement there. So I'm going to go ahead and stick those on, maybe give them a gold outline around the box of text. I'm not sure whether I will add in any of these stitches, probably not, but we'll see how we go. So I'm just going to go ahead and stick those down. I've decided to go for the stitches there. If we can get that on camera. I've decided to go for some stitches around the edge of this text, to be in keeping with the patchwork effect we have going on with the deer, and to cover up a few little happy accidents we had along the way with the outline there. There we are. I'm going to be calling him done there, I think, so I'll zoom us out and we can see the whole picture. There we go, there's our deer all done, and I think he's turned out pretty well considering he was made just using bits of junk mail and paper and cardboard that would be recycled there. It was a fun little picture to colour in, trying to give that patchwork effect there with lots of different patterns all coming together. And for me, quite a fun way to be coping with Millie Marotta's really detailed, kind of botanical looking animals here, as this isn't my style of colouring, my usual style of thing that I usually gravitate towards. But I do love using collage, and it was quite a fun way today to use up lots of bits and pieces that would have ended up recycled or actually thrown away. Trying to make him look as if he was patchworked in from lots of different kind of fabrics and stitched together, I think was a fun little experiment today, and I think it's worked quite well. And that brown paper gives a nice bit of texture in the background, a little bit of a break from all those patterns we've got going on. So yeah, altogether really pretty fun and quite effective, I think, today. A little bit of a quicker page to be colouring in. It's taken just under a couple hours. Would have been probably shorter if I hadn't had so much trouble with these antlers, but I think that solution we came up has worked pretty well. It's quite effective. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed following along today, this little kind of experiment of a picture. If you have enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Take care, and I'll see you in future videos. Bye!